So why invest in Memphis, Tennessee? Of all places, I ask a lot of people, I say, tell me what you know about Memphis. And typically they'll say, well, I've heard that there's great barbecue and I know Elvis lived there. And there's high crime. And all those things are true. There is higher crime in Memphis than I desire there to be. However, it is one of the commonalities that we have with other investing markets like St. Louis, Missouri, more recently a little bitty town, Little Rock, Arkansas, Huntsville, and more specifically Birmingham, Alabama, Indianapolis, Indiana, Kansas City, Missouri, and Jacksonville, Florida. Texas has got its own dynamics, but a lot of people have invested there. The rising tax rates just kind of squash it. But Memphis, all those areas have higher than average crime. Birmingham, much more so than Huntsville. But they're all workforce towns as well. What is a workforce town? It's the opposite of the tech boom that happened in California. We have a lot of warehouses that require a lot of truck drivers and workers on the railroad and workers within the warehouse. We have a ton of medical, which requires a lot more people working on the air conditioner, the security guard, cleaning the floors, taking care of the building, renters than it does doctors. So we are a workforce town, and what we do is provide safe, clean, and functional housing to the American workforce. If we just live by that motto, this all works. So our major employers are a big factor. Affordability. So most of you watching this video are living in an area where a $300,000 home does not or hardly exist. And if that $300,000 home were to be a rental, it would not rent for enough money to cover all the bills at the end of the month, which is the definition of negative cash flow. So our affordability, price-wise, you can buy a home in Memphis in a decent area for $130,000. It will rent for enough money that at the end of the month, after all the bills are paid, including your debt service, there's money left over, cash flow positive. Weather. Our weather in Memphis is very mild. We are high enough north of the southern coast that when a major hurricane hits Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana, we have heavy rain in Tennessee. It dissipates by the time it gets here. There's not been a tornado in the city of Memphis the past 80 years since my mother has lived here. So we don't have a lot of tornado activity like they do west in Missouri and Arkansas. We don't have a lot of snow. So snow is an anomaly. However, the past 2 years we've gotten it 4 to 6 inches. But before that, it had been 10 years since we had a major snow. If you own properties up north, every year your portfolio is covered in snow. So just the milder weather without being so south that we have the coastal is a big reason that people invest in Memphis. So some of those major employers, we've talked about St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital based in Memphis, Tennessee. Amazing story there. I'd encourage anybody to Google and learn more about their history, but ALSAC, the American Lebanese a group of Lebanese businessmen from Memphis, Tennessee, who were very successful, teamed up with Danny Thomas, a famous actor back in the day. And he was the face of St. Jude, but it was because one of their children had cancer, and there really wasn't a hospital dedicated to helping children with cancer. So those men got together, raised the money, got the hospital to Memphis, and it's a heartbeat of our town. It really is the most amazing place on earth. More recently, Ford Corporation has built and soon will be building their electric cars right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. That's a big push to get our major corporations from the north to the south. And the way that we attract them is lower taxes, lower real estate prices, utilities, cost of living for your employees. But the big one, very little, if any, union activity in the South. So the big companies, the iron producer or the metal producers like Nucor, steel producers, when those big factories in Detroit and Chicago have to be rebuilt, they don't rebuild them up there in the snow and the rougher areas. They come down south. They get big tax breaks and there's no unions. So that's the big secret there. And then lastly, of course, most of you watching this would know, FedEx was founded in Memphis and is still a major employer here in town. So that's just 3 of our major employers, amongst many others. International Paper, world headquarters, Memphis, Tennessee. Hilton has a large presence. They aren't headquartered here, but 2,000 plus employees. Nike, not headquartered in Memphis, but every shoe, every piece of apparel that is sold in North America is shipped from Memphis, Tennessee. Pfizer, same thing, not based in Memphis. I think it's a foreign company, if I'm not mistaken. But all the pills shipped out of Memphis to the world. A lot of that has to do with FedEx Medical. FedEx has a whole division, medical, taking one of the best exports America has right now is our pharmaceutical and bones, elbows, shoulders, all that kind of stuff, orthopedics, to the rest of the world who does not have the same advanced medical technology we have. So Thomas & Betts, AutoZone. AutoZone was started and is still headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee. Cargill, not headquartered in Memphis, but a huge employer down in the river, because a lot of people don't talk about the river as a big economic indicator for Memphis, but Cargill is based here for that reason. And on and on. I had to throw Turnkey Investing on there, major corporations.
Yeah. I like it.
So we use this map to highlight where those major employers are, and therefore cross-reference with the real estate you might be interested in buying. And then you'll know, have a good idea of where your residents may be employed. There's a good chance if you're buying in Fraser or Raleigh Springs area, they could work at Nike. Or there's a huge Amazon fulfillment center up there now. If they work down south by Graceland, there's a good chance they work downtown Memphis for the government in some way. I see that a lot. FedEx, because it's only 15 minutes from Graceland to downtown Memphis. FedEx downtown is the FedEx Logistics, so their trucking company is based downtown Memphis. Interestingly, in the old Gibson guitar factory, really cool building. But St. Jude, big employer, the city of Memphis, FedEx downtown, or just east of Whitehaven, our airport. Half of our airport is a cargo airport just for FedEx. 170 planes on average come in daily, offload their goods, hopefully to an 18-wheeler and then onto another plane. And so Memphis is the largest hub in the Northern Hemisphere for FedEx. That is what makes us an aerotropolis. What is an aerotropolis? That's what I asked when I first saw this. And it is a city, there's very few that have major air cargo, interstate systems and logistic companies, the railroad, and shipping. So usually you have to be a coastal city to qualify as an aerotropolis. Let's talk about the interstate system. So from north to south on I-55, from Chicago to New Orleans, we have one of the major interstate systems coming right through the city of Memphis. From east to west, I-40 from the East Coast all the way out to California, major trucking traffic there. A lot of y'all watching the news right now would see the big floods in North Carolina, and it wiped out part of I-40. That could be as damaging to our economy as anything. But having that come right through Memphis, lots of trucks. This is the mega site that was built speculatory by the state of Tennessee at the cost of $12.3 billion. I forget the cost, but the projected income in new salaries is $12.3 billion, and this is now the new home of Ford Motor Corporation electric car factory. So it was built speculatory by the state of Tennessee, hoping to bring in $12.3 billion in salaries, and just hit the gold strike by getting the best client they could to come in with Ford. Interstate 69. Now what is that? That's a NAFTA superhighway started back in the Clinton administration and still not complete, but comes right through Memphis. There's 4 pieces that do connect from Memphis, headed all the way down to Mexico, all the way up past Detroit into Canada. And what it did is it formed an outer loop around the city of Memphis to relieve some of the truck traffic coming through, but brought more trucks and more ability to ship out of Memphis via 18-wheeler instead of air cargo which really improved our Aerotropolis rating. And then we have the rail system. So Memphis is one of only 5 cities that has all 7 Class 1 railroads. What does that mean? Well, there's 7 rail lines that come through America, and we have all 7 coming through Memphis. And the reason is actually kind of cool. It dates back to the Civil War, when Sherman was coming through burning southern cities like Atlanta and Charlotte, Nashville. He ripped up the railroad tracks, and it took a long time to rebuild those railroad tracks. And sometimes they built houses where the railroad tracks used to be, so you can't come back and put the railroad in. Memphis was never burned. Memphis was never demolished. It was more occupied in the Civil War. So the remnants of having a fully functional rail system in Memphis, not destroyed in the Civil War, is one of the key factors there. So now we've got FedEx and other air cargo, major hub, interstate system, trucking companies all over Memphis, Tennessee. There's a trucking company on every corner here, and all the 5 of the 7 Class 1 railroads coming right through Memphis. And then finally, well, before we go there, I have to say that last slide is the BNSF intermodal unit that was built in Memphis about 15 years ago by this guy, Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett quoted here as saying, clearly, Memphis is part of our system, and certainly it is the center point for any activity and support market in the Southeast. He said, it is a major part of our business, and we expect to continue to grow Memphis. Memphis is ideally located. So just our location gave us the biggest upper hand in...
If I had a way of buying a couple 100,000 single-family homes and had a way of managing, the management is enormous. It's really a problem because they're one by one. They're not like apartment houses. So, but I would load up on them, and I would take mortgages out at very, very low rates. But if anybody is thinking about buying homes, 5 years ago they couldn't buy them fast enough because they thought they were going to go up, and now they don't buy them because they think they're going to go down, and interest rates are far lower. It's a way, in effect, to short the dollar, because you can take a 30-year mortgage, and if it turns out your interest rate's too high next week, you refinance lower, and if it turns out it's too low, the other guy's stuck with it for 30 years. So it's a very attractive asset class now.
If you are a young individual investor at home and you have your choice between buying your first home or investing in stocks, where would you tell someone is the better bet?
If I thought I was going to live, if I knew where I was going to want to live the next 5 or 10 years, I would buy a home and I'd finance it with a 30-year mortgage, and it's a terrific deal. And if I was an investor that was a handy type, which I'm not, and I could buy a couple of them at distressed prices and find renters, I think that's, and again, take a 30-year mortgage. It's a leveraged way of owning a very cheap asset now.
Wow. I had to put that in there because we were talking about Warren Buffett and his railroad, but then that video where Warren Buffett's telling people to go out and buy single-family homes with 30-year fixed mortgages as an investment over other options. The hardest part, he says, is the management. And that's why having a team like ours that covers everything is so key. Having someone whose interests are aligned with yours, who want you to succeed and don't look at you with dollar signs, that's what Warren Buffett was saying. You know, if you can manage it, it's the best asset there is. All right, so lastly, for making Memphis an aerotropolis, we've talked about the air cargo, the interstate system, and all the 18-wheeler trucks. We've talked about the rail lines that Mr. Buffett's highly invested in, including here in Memphis. And then lastly, we have the river. No one thinks of the Mississippi River as a shipping asset, but Memphis has Prince George Foreign Trade Zone down by the river. So this is all for international trade. We are the second largest inland port in the United States. I don't know who the first is, but that's what the stats said. So we're an inland port, meaning barges full of cars and grain and steel come up that river, petroleum that is turned into gasoline and jet fuel for the FedEx planes, right there on our doorstep at the river. So a huge employer, A lot of people that work for the river or in a warehouse here at Nike rent. So that's where we're getting to, right?